Hey everybody, it's your old pal Mike. I hope you're happy, healthy, and safe. The Gibson Lyre Vibrola is my second favorite vibrato ever produced. And in fact, it's only in second place behind the Jazzmaster and Jaguar offset vibrato, which you all know by this point that I use and love and discuss practically every waking moment of my life. But what you may not know is that the Lyre Vibrola is the vibrato that I learned to vibrato on. I had a 68 SG and a 77 ES355 that stayed in tune flawlessly. I mean, I could go all the way to the guard on those guitars and they would snap right back into tune. Now, for as much of a soft spot as I have for the Gibson Lyre Vibrola, I'm also a realist, and so I understand that it doesn't have the best reputation for tuning stability. In fact, if you watch a few recent videos from my friend Fludd, you'll see him compare the Gibson and Epiphone versions of this vibrato, and in his experience, they're not dependable at all. But the thing is, he's not wrong. His experience is not only valid, it's echoed by scores of players over the last, 60 years? But I'm not willing to lay the blame squarely on the shoulders of the hardware itself, but rather on an incomplete setup. Just like with offset guitars, just like with any other non-locking vibrato system on the market, there are steps that you can take to ensure that this thing lives up to its full potential. And let me tell you, it's got potential. Let's go to the bench and I'll show you what I'm talking about. But first, let's talk quickly about the guitars in the video. First up, we've got a brand new 2023 Gibson SG Standard 61 with a vibrola that my friends at Gibson sent over so I could make this video in the first place. Just a loaner. I'm not being paid for this, but full disclosure, I'm also using my beloved, trustworthy, long-suffering companion in the form of this 2007 Les Paul Studio Faded Mahogany, which I've had since, I think that same year, maybe 2008. This is the guitar that I use primarily for using a cello bow, you know, Sigaros, post-rock type stuff. But I brought it out for this video for a few reasons, but I've always just wanted a Les Paul with a vibrola on it. So I took the vibrola, bridge, and bridge posts off of the SG and mounted them all to this guitar just to see what that was like. And I gotta say, I'm a big fan. I don't think it's gonna live on this guitar forever. Surely it can't because the SG is only a loaner. Anyway, enough yapping, let's get to the bench. Now, when it comes to almost every non-locking vibrato system out there on the market, if you're experiencing tuning stability issues, those problems almost always come down to friction in one of two key areas. We're talking about the bridge or at the nut. Although, as an aside, a very important third key area is actually how you have the guitar strung. That can have a marked effect on tuning stability, but we'll touch on that later. Plus, these are the stock 10 to 46 strings that came on it from the factory, so I want to see how much better I can improve tuning stability. So what we're going to do is start out by dressing the nut properly, and also the bridge saddles as well. Before we dig in, I think it's a good idea to get a baseline of exactly how well this is staying in tune from the factory. So I'm going to overhand fret an E chord, and I'm going to strum, and we're just going to see how the vibrato does. So here's an E chord. Not too bad. I haven't set it up yet, so excuse the rattle. Ooh, a little sour. It seems like the D has pulled sharp. The G's okay. B feels a little sharp. E's okay. It's actually doing better than I would have expected. Let's try again. Let's really go to town. It's actually doing a lot better than I would have expected, and actually better than it did when I took it out of the box. So this is an encouraging sign. It doesn't feel like there's going to be a whole lot of work involved with making this thing perform its best. Again, not the worst, but it could be better. So let's start with the nut. Whenever I'm confronted with general tuning issues on any guitar, Gibson, Fender, Martin, etc., the first thing I'm always going to check is the nut. It is of vital, crucial, dire importance even that your nut is cut correctly. Otherwise, it's very likely that your strings will just simply bind at the nut, or they'll catch as they angle inward from the nut to their tuner, like on the Gibson headstock. And this is honestly the source of just about every tuning complaint I have ever dealt with on a Gibson. If you cut the D and G strings correctly, guess what? It stays in tune. It's beautifully pure. You don't have to worry about tuning instability issues because there is no inherent design flaw with the Gibson headstock, as so many denizens of the internet might try to convince you. It's just a matter of cutting these slots correctly. And that's what we're gonna do right now. All right, I've got my Music Nomad and trusty StewMac nut files in a variety of gauges here. You know what? We already know that the D string is pulling quite sharp. Significantly. Let's hear it. Yep, pulling significantly sharp. So the first thing we're gonna do is we're gonna pull this string out of the slot and we're gonna get to work. Now this set is gauged 10 to 46, meaning that this D string is likely a 26, and I happen to have the 26 StewMac file. Now when you choose a file, you might say to yourself, Self, why don't we match the file to the gauge of string? Let's use the 26. That's what the string is, so it makes sense that we'd use the exact same gauge. And you're pretty much correct. That's okay. That's a great way to go. However, when it comes to a vibrato-equipped Gibson or a Fender offset, I often like to go just a little bit bigger. Now with the StewMacs, you can kind of wiggle a little bit and widen the slot a little bit, but I like precision, and I've had absolutely zero ill effects from using the next size up. Now when you are cutting the D or the G on a Gibson headstock, you don't want to just go straight on, you know, right from the nut straight to the tuner, because you're introducing an angle right here at the corner that the string is going to get stuck on, meaning that it will often go out of tune. And that's why when I cut these, I start straight along the string path and then I angle. Oh, you can feel it dig in right there. That's why I do that. That's why I angle. And now we've gently curved that slot so that the string has absolutely no sharp angles to catch on. I should also mention that I don't just round over the D and G, I round every one of these slots, because if you look at a Gibson headstock, the strings never go entirely in a straight path toward the tuner. So I just try to make that little transition as easy as possible on my string brothers here. Another thing you want to do when you're cutting a nut for a vibrato equipped guitar is you want to widen the back of that slot so as the string exits, there's still nothing for it to catch on. That always seems a good way to live. All right, let's see if that helped. Ooh, that feels a lot better. You can feel in the tuner as you rotate it, you can feel when a string is getting caught, when it's gripping. I'm going to use a little bit of Mitchell's abrasive cord now to smooth out the slot, since we've got a lot better stability happening. Stuff is miraculous. Doing better already, but that's not the end of the story. And that's because we're gonna do the exact same thing here at the saddles. Now these saddles from the factory are kind of roughed in. You can see grooves from the strings in there, and they've got a lot of sharp edges. And that is precisely why I keep a very old set of StewMac nut files around. And that's so that I can use them on metal without worrying about messing up my nice files. So here's the 26 and 32. And I'm just gonna start by clearing out the slot. And then I'm going to round off the back edge of it so that the string isn't hitting yet another sharp angle. We're just gonna work away every sharp angle here. And then just like we did with the nut, that looks nice. Just like we did with the nut, we're going to finish off with some abrasive cord. And now that we've got our slots both rounded over and taken care of, what we're going to do is the same thing that I do for offsets with fixed bridges, is I'm going to apply just a little bit of Burt's Bees to the underside of the string, wipe away the excess, and tune back up. Would you listen to that? It's working. I love hearing that. I'm going to do the exact same thing to every other string on this guitar. I would like to point out that the strings are strung with looks like 1 wrap, really 1.5 wraps. I'll be generous here. 1.5 wraps, no locking winds, no over-under, or no luthier's knot, as it's popular to call it these days. And you know, people razz on the luthier's knot, say it's unnecessary, but whenever I have a Gibson with a vibrato, I do the luthier's knot, and that improves stability beautifully. I think that might be the last piece of this puzzle. But as I've been working on it, I am God, I am so much happier with how that's staying in tune now. This is now a usable guitar. Let's put it in playing position, see what we get. I don't remember how to play a Gibson, that's the problem. But listen to this. All the way to the guard. We did it! One quick note here, in the demos and on the video and right now, you can see that this arm is terribly loose and not fun at all to have to go grab when you're playing. And It's also quite noisy. I have a solution for this that I did not have time to employ before filming this video in the form of replacing this screw with one that is just slightly longer. And then you want to grab 2 accompanying nuts of the right thread count. Remove this screw, put the new one in there, use the first nut to find and set the tension that you like. And then once the arm is in place, either firmly or loosely or whatever you like, use the second nut that you bought behind the first nut to lock it in place. And this will never loosen again. You can even put Loctite on it if you want to make it permanent or semi-permanent, and that's a good way to go. I've done it many a time, and my 77 355 had the arm done that way, and it was neither noisy nor did it ever loosen in the time that I owned that guitar, the many, many years. Another quick note is that in some of the bench footage, you can see this bridge moving quite a lot. I did use some Loctite on the posts to kind of hold them more firmly in place, and it worked great. And the reason for that is that with current Gibson production, the last thing I want in the whole world is for this bridge to move along with the strings like it would on a Jazzmaster. This bridge isn't designed for that. And so when you have a bridge that's just rocking in its body inserts, there's no guarantee that that's going to zero out when you return the vibrato to its starting position. So I like to eliminate that as best I can. So what I did was I just used some blue Loctite on the threads here, not enough to freeze it in place. And even if you do, heat will break that connection. So it's not a permanent thing. And it worked great along with filing the saddle slots and lubricating. Now, another thing you can do if you want your bridge to rock is that Gibson employed domed thumb wheels, which is a really interesting design choice, but they use that on like Bigsby equipped 330s. You see them all the time, and it works great. You could also replace the saddles with nylon saddles. That also works really well. So you've got some options if that's a concern for you, but like I said, this is working great in this configuration, and this is my preferred method of doing it. Now, some of you might be wondering why I primarily used this guitar in the demos instead of the SG, and there's a good reason for that. But we're going to save it for another video because I need to do some more research. I need to ask for some reality checks from other techs, and I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about here. So yeah, stay tuned for a future video on the Vibrola, and another very interesting facet of Gibson design that might have a big impact on tuning stability. But all that to say, thank you so much for watching. Quick shout out to my supporters on Patreon. I love you. I appreciate you being patient with me as I tackle this problem and so many other things that happened this summer. If you're interested in supporting the channel, click the links in the description down below. That's the end of the video. Hope you're taking care of yourselves and each other, and I'll see you in the next one.